morning, everyone. We've made it to the last day. I know I've heard from several of you here and there that, you've sort of been feeling a little information overload. So I think we have the perfect session coming up for you. I'm delighted to introduce a colleague from FIU this morning. Rosario Lozada is Director of Wellbeing in Law and Professor of Legal Skills and Values at FIU's College of Law. She served as the 2021 chair of the AALS section on balance in legal education. She is an advocate and student of well-being in the profession and is engaged in leadership and well-being initiatives locally and nationally. She co-developed Well-Being at FIU Law, a program that the American Bar Association Standing Committee on Professionalism recognized with its 2021 Gambrel Professionalism Award. They deemed it an exemplary and innovative program that helps maintain the highest principles of integrity and dedication to the legal profession and the public. Professor Lozada trained with UCLA's Mindfulness Awareness Research Center at the Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior. She is a certified professional mindfulness teacher through the International Mindfulness Teachers Association. She was born in Miraflores, Peru, and is a native Spanish speaker. So please help me welcome Rosario.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne, Dean Prestamo, for that beautiful welcome and for the invitation to be here. I'm really honored. And when I hear all that stuff, I think that's really cool. But I also I'm a human being doing the humaning thing, which we know is hard, and so I like to keep it very real and acknowledge just all the challenges that we've had to overcome to be here in this moment, and so regardless of what you hear, you might connect better with me if you know that, like, in the last 2 years, my kids went to college remotely and it was really hard. I taught on Zoom and it was really hard. I went through a divorce. It was really hard. I moved twice, very hard. I lost my dad, very hard. And I still feel really privileged, with all those challenges. And so I think it's important to remember everything we've overcome to be here. Maya Angelou always says, let's remember, what we've overcome and honor that. So I know you all have had special challenges serving universities, students, faculty in this strange time, where we've been dealing with a pandemic, the uncertainty of a pandemic, political polarization, a long overdue national reckoning with racial injustice, constant violence. I read an article this morning that in Chicago, gun violence is a daily occurrence. And then whatever else, we're not human beings who don't have other lives, right? We show up to work with all our challenges, and we keep going. So I would just want to honor that. And I welcome you to bring all of that. I want us to speak and share in an authentic way. I came to mindfulness 20 years ago. I know because it was right after my son was born. And I had a lot of symptoms that I wasn't familiar with, that were very unfamiliar with me, that were very unpleasant. I later learned they were depression and anxiety after having a child. And I, in a way, was a gift because I was introduced to this practice. It's not a cure-all. That's the first thing I'll say. It's a complement to other things that you already know you need to do to take care of yourself and to be a better leader, right? You're already a good leader, to be the leader you're supposed to be. So that's what today we're going to explore together. I see this very much as a learning space. There's a lot of wisdom in this room. And so we're going to do some practices where we get to learn from each other and also try some of these skills to see how they fit. And if you're skeptical about mindfulness, bring it on. That's part of you that's protecting you from soft science, whatever if that's what you think it is, right? We're trained to be very critical in academia. So if you notice that thought, just welcome it and say, that's another thought. We have approximately 60,000 thoughts a day. How many of you have thoughts that aren't true? Right? Okay, because we catastrophize, we worry, we do all kinds of things. The mind does not give us a rest, right? So just welcome all those thoughts and let yourself judge later. And if you notice yourself judging during the presentation, well, then say, oh, that's me judging again. Let me see if I can put it aside and see if there's anything here for me. And you get to decide. That's you, right? You are your own best teacher, okay? So with that said, what I hope to do is take us through a little bit of an exercise on what kind of leaders we want to be, and explore the body as an energy system. In academia, we tend to live right here, like these 3 pounds of our brain, but we have this whole body, right? So explore what it means to have a body and what kind of energies are lodged in there. A little bit about stress. Is it good? Is it bad? Does it have to be one or the other? And what can make us stronger in times of burnout? How many of you have felt burnt out in the last couple of years? Yeah, so there's a lot of science on what makes us stronger. So I'm going to touch a little bit upon that and a little bit about the science of well-being. And then we'll come back to transformative leadership and what that means to you, because you get to decide, right? How does that sound? Yeah, it's a good plan. All right, love it. All right, so that was my welcoming slide. That's me in Machu Picchu climbing with my kids. Very fun. Okay, so to begin, I want to invite you to be curious about this question, right? I would like to be the kind of leader who, and if you can find maybe a partner next to you, and if you're at home, please, if you're Zooming from around the world, please treat this as a reflection prompt, okay? I would like to be the kind of leader who, and you get to think about that together. And if you don't judge yourself, or if you catch yourself judging, just say, oh, that's me judging. You get to pretend you're a marketing person, dreaming big and thinking, the sky's the limit. I would like to be the kind of person, the kind of leader who, and share with your partner. So I'll just give you a couple minutes. Okay, let's pause for a second. What are some of the themes that came up? If anybody dares share, I'd be really grateful. Any ideas or thoughts, values, themes, hopes with respect to the kind of leader you want to be? There's no wrong answer. Yes.
I'll volunteer, and thank you for being here today. And I love the color of your shirt. It's awesome. Yeah, okay. So I guess I would like to be the kind of leader who helps others be their best selves.
Who helps others be their best selves. Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. Inspirational and caring.
Inspirational and caring. Thank you. Inspirational, caring, the kind of leader who helps others be their best selves. Thank you so much.
Hello, we want to be leaders who are easy to approach, who listen who are not big leaders who direct from the back to our people.
Right, easy to approach, good listeners, beautiful, thank you. Let's take one more. I heard a lot of talking, so. Oh, one from.
I have a few from online.
Perfect, from online, welcome them.
I have Peggy from Florida Gulf Coast University saying she wants to be a thoughtful, intentional, and kind.
Thoughtful, intentional, and kind. Yeah.
Marcia would like to be the kind of leader who listens and helps. Plato wants to lead by example. Servant leadership. Veronica, fair and exemplary.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think we have wonderful aspirations. So now I give you a little bit of a challenge question. What gets in the way? Right? And with this one, I invite you to really be curious rather than critical. What gets in the way of being that kind of leader? And again, let's partner up. If you're listening from remotely, please use this as a journaling activity, which is very powerful in itself too. So and be vulnerable only to the level of your comfort, please. Because we're all in different spaces there. So what gets in the way? Okay, let's give you about 30 more seconds. Okay, so why don't we tune in? I think this one we could probably spend the whole hour on, right? So let's start with the people who commented from home on remotely. So if you could please tell us, Chris. It's Chris, right? Okay, awesome.
It's coming in. Nuhrudin said, my impatience gets in the way.
Okay, internal. Oh boy, how many had internal things getting in the way? We're going to talk about that.
Veronica says, stress.
Okay, who else had stress, by the way? Some people had stress. Okay, we have another volunteer here. Thank you so much. Do you want to just shout it out and I'll echo?
I'm getting there.
Perceptual?
Maybe for the sake of those that are online, perceptual differences.
Perceptual difference.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So again, the brain is doing things, right? And keeping us maybe from being that kind of leader. So we have it too, impatience and perceptual differences. Anyone else? Thank you for that share. We have one right up here. Go ahead, sir.
I don't set the agenda. All sort of cases ends up on my table, small problems that hinders me to start with the big problem.
Oh, okay, the incessant little tasks that keep you from focusing on the big picture, right? How many of you have like the emails that just keep coming in and you can't keep up, and then you have those projects that you really need to do, and how do you balance all that, right? And then there's the inner critic saying, you're not getting enough done, right? we have these bookends of our day, at least sometimes I do. I didn't get enough sleep, and then at the end of the day, I didn't get enough done. That's a hard way to live, right? And that's internal. All right, so let's explore. We're going
We
to
have
come back. Oh, yeah,
one more at the mic.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Oh, yes. Similar to what you're saying, sometimes our internal tolerance level to the imperfection. We want everything to be perfect, like your dress is perfect.
Yes. Perfection is the, what is the expression? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? And so somebody said to me yesterday, you're going to be awesome tomorrow. And I said, it was my daughter. And I said, no, I'm just going for good enough, because if I put perfect in there, it's too harsh, you know? And so she said, okay, Mom, I was just giving you a compliment. So yeah, that perfection, right? Okay, so we're going to come back to these questions, but right now, and I'm trying to say and more than but, because it's open, right? Let's tune into the body, right? I said we were going to go there. So even now, this last day of the conference, like just sensing where's your energy level, you know? And we just made a switch from talking about what gets in the way, yeah, but there's a connection. We're going to get there, and there's a connection. The energies of maybe excitement, maybe a little bit of depletion, like resources and you know, expended in getting here and lending your attention, right? Maybe some energy of excitement, maybe a little bit of fearfulness about how am I going to do all this stuff that I heard about that I can do? How am I going to become less insular and collaborate, you know, within my institution or across institutions? And so you feel a little bit overwhelmed. And how does that feel in the body? Well, there's been a lot of studies about the body as an energy system, because it is. We don't think about it that way. And in particular, I want to highlight studies by Carly Hoke, she's out of Stanford. And she says that based on her research, there are 3 levels that we live in, right? One is this low level, lethargic, unmotivated state where it's very hard to even start, right? And when we're in that state, limiting beliefs carry the day. Like there's no way I'm going to be able to fill in the blank, right? So during the pandemic, Adam Grant wrote an article that went viral, like, is that the word? I don't know. In the New York Times about languishing. I don't know if you saw it, everybody's languishing. How many of you experienced this during the pandemic, right? So when you're in this low level energy state, I did too, okay? When you're, and you didn't raise your hand, you're probably tired. So when you're in this low level energy state, not a great time to make decisions, by the way, right? But sometimes we do, and then things happen, right? Okay, so then this other one. So this one is this high energy, restless, like almost manic state. It masks as something good because we think we're getting a lot done. We're churning, we're going really fast. We fuel that energy that is constant with caffeine, sometimes with sugar, and then at the end of the day, maybe a drink to come down, right? We're not our best selves when we're in this state. When I talk about this state in academic spaces, everybody nods because they know what this feels like. And when, let's just imagine you're working from home and you're in this, you think it's flow, but you're really just churning without any attention to what your body needs. And let's say somebody in your house taps you on the shoulder, you'll just jump and maybe bark, right? Because you're not your best self. You're just in a manic, restless, high energy, a little bit destructive state that masks as a good thing in academia. And we know intellectually, everyone here knows that's not a great way to work, right? And then the last state, of course, is the one we want to be, is in this flow, this contemplative state where we can be what we need to be, who we need to be at work, and to people around us, and to ourselves. We're attuned to our energy, what we need when we need breaks, real breaks, right? Not just breaks where we like check on the people in our lives. Is everybody okay? The person in the hospital. No, breaks to actually take a break, right? Where we even, I read something from the book called Burnout, that even folding laundry, if you're not thinking about all the things you have to do, can be a beautifully like, restorative tasks, right? As walking in nature, but not if you're like this, right? So we can be experts at not resting. Because you have gotten to where you've gotten and you're here at this conference, I don't doubt that you know what you need to do to get to level 3, right? You know what kinds of practices help you get to level 3. Give me some examples. No, this is a judgment-free zone because it's personal for everybody. What helps you get to level 3? Yeah. Talking to other people, connection, collaboration, right? That energy and of people with whom you feel safe and known and understood. That helps us get to level 3, much more than churning through emails, right? Putting out fires. Right? What else helps us get to level 3? Nature. Okay, all right, any of you turn to nature sometimes, right? They did studies that people who looked at trees for X amount of minutes a day versus people who looked at tall buildings had a better state of well-being. This is a University of Michigan study. I'm not making this up. What else? Yeah. Rest, self-care, right? Sleep, self-care. And yet, are we good at this? No, right? So, yes, sir. Music. Oh, there's so many studies too on what music can do. I'll tell you my little secret. Whenever I have to, it's not a secret anymore. Whenever I have to do something that is a little bit like a tiny bit scary, which I still get nervous when I present, I play my anthem song, which is Brave by Sarah Bareilles. So I played it on my way here and it just got me going, you can be amazing, turn a phrase into a weapon, anyway. So music, classical music, there's studies that certain rhythms in music actually put our body into a positive state. So music is, so for everyone, it can be something different. It might be playing music, right? Yes, please share.
Online, we have a few people saying exercise.
Exercise, okay, I'm so glad that one came up. I didn't have time to exercise this morning, but I knew I needed to release some stress. So I did 12 minutes. 14. I did 14 on an elliptical. I was like, I need it because I'm going to present. I know I need it, right? So anyway, my point is we know how to get to level 3, right? We just don't often do it, right? So in the book Burnout by the Nagoski sisters, which came out in 2020, they studied stress, they studied burnout, and they came up with, based on their research, 3 practices that make us stronger. And you've already touched on some of them, okay? So one is rest, number 1. And this is not just sleep. It's other forms of giving your logic and reasoning part of your brain a break, right? Whatever they may be. And some of these exercise, music, nature, connection, right? Okay, which leads us to the other big one, connection. How about that? That actually makes us stronger. And yet, I bet you're not surprised when you hear that, right? That's the first thing you shared. And then the last one, boy, this is a tough one, right? Self-compassion, right? Compassion is something that we're taught at an early age, particularly in the West, to direct which way? Outward or inward? Outward, right? Be kind when you go to school and be good to that other, to the new kid at school. All the advice we hear, it's always about outward. This generation is like a little bit wiser than us, I think, in terms of this concept. I hear my students talk about self-compassion more. Now let's picture academic spaces. Rest versus productivity bias, right? Productivity bias reigns supreme, right? And I have a quote from, they told me if I moved around, the mic would do this, from Brene Brown. And she says, productivity bias says, I am what I accomplish and how well I accomplish it. Let's just sit with it, right? So we live in that space. And so we forget about the rest of us. We are not just what we accomplish. and sometimes those setbacks, by the way, that's who we are too. That's how we grow. And these other practices that bring us back to our whole selves, music, nature, exercise, connection, that's who we are too, right? We're not just that article we published, or certainly I don't think I'm any of those things. Then, oh, I don't have the slides up there. That's kind of funny. Okay, connection. In academic spaces, we prize what? Autonomy, right? Go it alone. We're supposed to be the experts, right? If you ask for help, sometimes in some spaces, it's viewed as a weakness, right? So academia doesn't help us with these things that make us stronger, but it doesn't have to be that way, because guess what? We're academia, right? And then the last one, self-compassion. When I think about academia, I think about like how we're always criticizing to make things better in a way. But if that's your whole paradigm of always criticizing, you internalize that, right? To a point where you can't really be good to yourself. So, and this is, I want to also say, this is a hopeful presentation. Right now, it feels like, wait, but you are leaders. So you get to maybe engage in these practices more intentionally. Now, there's a temptation to say, because your employees will be more productive. Well, yeah, the science says that, but maybe they will also be more likely to be engaged, to be themselves, to be creative, to show up as they are. But that starts with you, right? So I thought, let's see, what else do I want to say about this? I think that's it. So I would actually like to try a practice with you all. Would you like to try a practice? Yeah? You're like skeptical. It's good to be skeptical. That's the part I said, that's the part of you that's protecting yourself. So let's do a practice in self-compassion. There's a lot of science on this because we're in academia. I think it's good to give you a little bit of the background. Stanford is doing a lot of science on self-compassion. UT Austin is doing a lot of science on self-compassion. This researcher in particular, Kristen Neff, has done a ton of research with Christopher Germer. And the 3 elements of self-compassion, you see them up there, are kindness to the self, acknowledgement of our common humanity, and mindfulness. Let me break those down a little bit. Kindness to the self. So when we experience the ordinary challenges and the extraordinary challenges of life, how can we relate to ourselves? Can we treat ourselves the way we might treat a friend, right? You know how sometimes you have a problem and then you call a friend, connection, and the friend says, wait, that email, that exchange with that person, 95% of that isn't about you, right? Can we actually remember that ourselves sometimes, right? Can we develop a relationship with ourselves where we are our friends and our allies rather than the constant critic? It's radical, right? It's a radical practice. Common humanity. So when we experience the part of life that is challenging, the feelings of inadequacy, everybody has feelings of inadequacy. Remembering that we are not alone, that other people have also experienced this. And this is part of the human condition, right? You don't get a pain-free life. It's just, that's not the way it works. Susan David says in her TED Talk, she's a psychologist, she says that one of her students, or I forget who, said to her, I don't want to feel like sad. I don't want to feel it. And she said, well, you have dead people's goals. And I thought, well, that's a good thing to remember, right? But remembering that we are not alone when we experience these feelings. And then the last one is mindfulness, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. But for right now, let me just say it's a willingness to be with whatever arises. And it's 3 usual suspects: thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. That's what's going to come up, right? And the trick is to not over-identify with them, right? So that you're not that thought. That feeling of inadequacy is a feeling. It will pass. The poet Rainier Maria Rilke says, let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is fine, right? So not over-identifying. So let's do a practice. And you can keep your eyes open. You can close your eyes. You can lower your gaze. You can drink your coffee. You are your own best teacher. And tech people, I told you that you need to do this for yourself too. So stop teching and start practicing. I was just in the room with them. And just feel the support of the chair holding you up. And wiggle your toes and just see how that feels. Roll your shoulders back or forward. Maybe move your head from side to side and see what it feels like to kind of come into your body. And maybe take a cleansing breath in, breathe in, knowing that you are breathing in, breathe out, knowing you are breathing out. As we take a few moments of silence, thoughts, those 60,000 thoughts, some of them will pop up. That's just part of the deal, part of the practice. You're not doing anything wrong. And just feel this in-breath and this out-breath. And this next in-breath and this next out-breath. We have the ability to shift the way we relate to ourselves with a little bit more kindness. As those thoughts and those feelings and the stress in the body, the pains manifest, we can just be curious about them and let them be. And sensing into this in-breath and this next out-breath. One teacher says, you are the sky, everything else is the weather. You are the sky, everything else is the weather. And if you're judging yourself because you don't think you're doing this right, that's just another thought. That's what the brain does. Just give yourself a little half smile and say, yeah, it's that humaning thing happening again. And we're going to invite 4 phrases of kindness towards the self. May I have the courage to be imperfect. May I have the courage to be imperfect. May I accept myself just as I am. May I accept myself just as I am. May I trust that I am enough right now. May I trust that I am enough right now. May I remember that there are people who love me and care about me. May I remember that there are people who love me and care about me. And just notice this in-breath and this next out-breath. And if you'd like to, place one palm over your heart and the other over your belly. And just notice your heart beating and your belly rising and falling as the breath takes care of you. And as we close the practice, take a moment to appreciate yourself for trying this practice of self-compassion and kindness. And take a couple of more breaths, and when you're ready, not until you're ready, You can lift your gaze or open your eyes and reconnect with your surroundings. Anybody asleep? If you're comfortable, any shares in response to that practice, right? I'll share that when I first started this, I was like, no, that's not how I get things done. This isn't for me. You know, I can't relate to that. That's the kind of stuff my mother would say to me just because she's my mother, right? So it's a practice, right? It's something we can develop over time. But notice some of the themes that you all talked about, the perceptions that we have, the wanting to be perfect, they're built into those phrases. Very interesting, right? To think about that. Those phrases in particular were developed by a teacher, La Sarmiento, so I want to acknowledge her. So would anybody like to share what that was like? Maybe with your partner? Yeah, take 30 seconds to tell your partner whether you hated it, thought it was crazy, thought it was great. Oh, not supposed to say crazy, so sorry. Just any reactions, or whether, you know, it's not for you, which is totally good too, because you are your own best teacher. Okay, thank you, thank you. So sometimes this reaction comes up, wait a second, I can't be kind to myself. I need stress, I need that critic to get stuff done. If I don't have some stress in my life, if I don't have that deadline, if I don't have that harsh voice, I can't get stuff done. How many of you are familiar with that little voice? It says, I need some stress in my life. And then there's others, yeah, right? And then there's others who say, wait, I don't want stress in my life. Stress is it's debilitating. Sometimes my heart won't stop. I feel nauseous from the stress, the anxiety. Well, you're right too, right? Because stress is not a one-dimensional concept. Stress is complicated, right? The most important thing to keep in mind is stress is an adaptive response to change, right? Your body actually does it as part of its evolution. That's why we're here. We're alive because our ancestors experienced stress and knew where to find food and when to run away from the bear, right? There are different kinds of stress. There's a lot of science now that tells us there's the good stress, the stress, the stress that actually gets us going and nudges us forward with our big projects, or maybe even helps us make a dent in all those small tasks that come up that still require our leadership and attention, right? However, when stress reaches a peak, as you can see in the slope, it can become debilitating, right? And over time, chronic stress, distress can have serious effects on your body, right? We know that. So it is not in itself a bad thing, but it's on a continuum. And it's up to us to really show up for our stress and know where we are and when we need to do the rest, the connection, the self-compassion practice to get us back to the optimal level of stress. No one lives in eustress. I mean, if they do, you're dismissed and you get your money back. Can I say that? So we're always titrating and finding our way on this slope, right? The key is to remember those practices that can bring us back into the eustress, right? And then, of course, we have this beautiful science of well-being. Now, we used to think, when I'm 52 years old, so I was raised, you don't have a fever, you're going to school. So health was just the absence of illness. And now we know it's a constant striving for thriving in various life dimensions, right? And we're moving towards flourishing in various life dimensions. And you're familiar with these: physical, intellectual, social, spiritual, a sense of alignment, environmental, financial. Yeah, we need that, right? So we know these, and then the other thing that now we know so well is that we need to experience a sense of belonging to feel well, right? That we are supposed to be where we are, that we bring something to the table, and that we are seen, right? So that's another huge development, which is, I mean, how didn't we? Now it's trendy, right? But we should have known this a long time ago, right? So Audre Lorde says, self-care is not self-indulgent, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. Self-care is not self-indulgent, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. Why? We are taught to care for ourselves last, if at all, right? And you know, everybody here at some point, probably many of you have been on a plane, put your oxygen mask on first before you attend to the person near you, a child, an elderly person who needs you. And yet even that, the first time I heard that as a parent, I thought that was selfish, right? So what happens that we know all these things, we know the science of well-being, we know we need rest, self-compassion, human connection, and yet we forget, right? And I forget. And that's the piece where mindfulness can help us, right? So that's where mindfulness comes in. So I love this image because we have the hamster in one wheel going, probably in level 2, destructive, right? Energy. And then the other one gets off and says, I had an epiphany, right? Now that doesn't mean that the hamster on the right can't get back on. But when the hamster gets back on, it's perhaps with intention. One of you all said you want to lead with intention. It's with intention. It's in a whole state, right? From a state of wellness. It's with a renewed sense of purpose, right? With a sense of belonging, with a sense of your whole self, right? But if we are constantly just churning, we can lose sight of that. So again, that takes us to mindfulness. So mindfulness can help us remember. Now, I like to first say mindfulness is not a cure-all. It's not a substitute for whatever other well-being practices you have in your toolkit, including medication, counseling, and all the other practices we've been talking about. It's a supplement, and it's kind of a supplement that can help you remember to do what you need to do. So put really simply, it's, I have the elements here, so I'll put them in here. This is one of many definitions. So it's, first of all, a practice, okay? You don't ever become an expert on mindfulness. And I'll share a funny little vignette with you. When the conference marketing people were putting stuff on Twitter about who the speakers were gonna be, I saw it said, mindfulness expert and thought leader, and it had my name. And I always say, there's no such thing as a mindfulness expert, because if someone says that, don't believe them, because we're always learning. And so I freaked out when I saw that. And it was a beautiful thing to say, and I said to my kids, do I respond and say that's not right? And they're like, no, Mom, chill, So it's a constant practice. We're always beginning again, okay? Of paying attention, okay? Paying attention, so you are actually harnessing the power of your attention in the present moment. Now, this one is like really, really tricky, right? It turns out research out of shows that we spend 50% of our time not in the present moment. 50% of our time not in the present moment. Either rehashing, regretting, worrying about things that happened, or forecasting problems, planning. Even, you can be on vacation and you can be taking pictures of it so that, you know, you can share with other people and they can realize what a great time you're having, right? Or you can be on vacation thinking, I need to come back here next year, right? So we are often away from the present moment, right? And yet, that's really the only place we can lead, love, experience what we are experiencing, and be fully human, right? We the other way that this is often captured, we are in the nurse, curse, and rehearse cycle, rather than in the present, right? So the practice of bringing your attention to the present moment on purpose. So that's very different from you're in the turn lane, and we know those of us from Miami, when you're in the turn lane and then maybe you glance at your phone and then the arrow turns green and the person behind you is not shy with the horn and you have your attention brought to the green arrow, right? That's turning yellow and the people behind you are angry. And so that's different from on purpose. That's because somebody jolted you into attention. But on purpose, I'm going to attend to what's here now, right? And I could do that right here, like right now. And then the last one is probably one of the trickiest ones, without judgment, right? Wow, we love to judge. We're always judging. You know, I'm judging. Am I doing a good job? Are they, you know, do they, you know, are they getting something out of this? And I'm like, Rosie, judging, let it go, right? We're always judging. The thing is, we don't realize we're judging, and so we're constantly in that state. So mindfulness can help us remember. Right? How many of you have tried mindfulness? Just curious. Yeah. So, and the only the two words that I think are my favorite about mindfulness practices are begin again. Right? So you just begin again. And it's not just about sitting on a cushion. It's not about you know, going on a retreat, although those things are really nice. A meditation retreat, but mindfulness is something you can weave into your day informally, like on-the-go practices where you can actually pause at noon and just see how you're doing. Just notice the thoughts, the feelings, the sensations that are present and attending to them. And what we did a self-compassion practice, but you can literally just breathe for 30 seconds, knowing that you're breathing, and that may change the next interaction in your day and how you show up for yourself and others and the kind of leader you might be, right? So I like to highlight some of the stars that are, some of them in Here we have someone who I've learned a lot from in the center is Scott Rogers. He's the author of a wonderful book, Elements of Mindfulness. And we have Dr. Amishi Jha, also a recent author of Peak Mind. I can't say enough also good things about that book. And then Rhonda McGee, who's done tremendous work on leadership, mindfulness, and the inner work of racial justice, how we heal ourselves and heal and transform our communities. And I want to offer her take, which I share, so I can't say it better than she does, on transformative leadership. So this is straight from Rhonda McGee. She says, mindfulness in action could be considered a practical definition of applied ethics. Ethics are no more consistently and concretely applied than in leadership. As leaders, we make ourselves responsible for the actions and choices of others. Hard, right? And we also share in the responsibility for their consequences. Transformational and ethical leadership allows us to use leadership. Please listen to this part especially. To use leadership not for the mere exercise of power, but for healing of self and the other. Using leadership to heal the self and other through mindfulness. So that's an invitation, right, to consider. To give you permission, because you're an academic, right, in academic space, universities across the world actually are embracing contemplative practices in some form. Here are a few, I just highlighted a few, and as are corporations. And I want to offer, I didn't put Medium up here. I don't know if you're familiar with Medium. Evan Williams, I think he actually also founded first Twitter and now he's at Medium. He says that his contemplative practices that he brings to his leadership is less hierarchy, more silence, and deep listening. Less hierarchy, more silence, and deep listening. And just think about sometimes when we're in conversations, how we're already planning what we're going to say when the other person's speaking, right? Or if they're sharing something, we want to say, oh, I had that similar experience, but wait till you hear my story, right? So this silence to actually be able to invite the energy of listening. And he says the DNA of a company comes from a founder's personality. If I'm less anxious, everyone is less anxious. Again, that takes us back to why rest, self-compassion, why those and connection are important for you as leaders. Not just to tell other people to do that, because you're probably here thinking, I need to make sure I tell so-and-so to do this. I need to make sure that so-and-so sees this presentation. And here, we're actually asking you to give yourself permission to think about how this can affect you and maybe nurture you. Because if you're less anxious, if you're your whole self, that's who you bring to your leadership role. Eileen Fisher, she uses circle leadership, a model that she developed over time, and it's designed to create psychological safety. So literally everybody's in a circle, nobody's at the front of the room, and they invite this spirit of not knowing, like what in mindfulness practices is called a beginner's mind. It's okay to not have the answers, right? Not so common in academic spaces, right? So this concept of, okay, we're here, let's explore it, and we know we don't have all the answers. And then they actually start their meetings with a minute of silence. And then they always say there's a leader in every chair. And they pass a gourd around so that everyone literally has a voice when they're holding an object, right? This is just one of many models, right? And her company has done very well. Some of the ideas with respect to sustainability came out of this leadership model. And she listened, right? So now, questions, by the way, I want to pause for a second for questions. I'm doing okay on time. Any questions? Yeah, you still with me? Yeah, okay, excellent. All right, so we did self-compassion, right? A practice. You don't do self-compassion. We did a practice, and now I want to do a practice on connection. Okay, so this one is going to require a little bit of effort from you. And in this exercise, there's going to be a speaker and there's going to be a listener. Okay, and then after a couple of minutes, you'll reverse roles, right? And the speaker will become the listener and the listener will become the speaker. I'm going to give you a super beautiful and easy prompt for you to work through when you're the speaker. And you get 2 minutes to talk about it, okay? I'll tell you, if you're at home, please use this to reflect, or if you're listening with a colleague, tuning in, please do this practice with a colleague. I'll be your timekeeper. In this exercise, when you are the speaker, you don't need to use all your time. If you don't feel like talking, you can be silent until you feel ready to talk again, if you do, okay? When you are the listener, you actually have the more active role. Okay, why? Your anchor is the other person, right? It's very hard to give your attention to another fully, right? Amishi Jha, who I just had on that slide, says, attention is the currency of leadership, right? So we're gonna practice how are we giving our attention to that person. Will our attention wander? Yeah, we just said 50% of the time it goes somewhere else. So it will. So then what do? With compassion and kindness to the self, we come back, right? And what are we going to do? We don't interrupt when we're the speaker. you're going to notice those energies in your body of wanting to say something, of wanting to affirm the other person, of wanting to share a similar experience. You're also going to experience thoughts. Oh no, am I going to be able to share something as good as this person is sharing? Right? This is what we do. This is how our brains operate. And you get to just be curious about those experiences and return to bringing your attention to that person. Okay? And what are we going to do? In between the speaker and listener, we're going to pause for 30 seconds just to honor the exchange. And note, before any more speaking is done, Eileen Fisher does a minute before she does her meeting. We're going to do 30 seconds of a pause to just notice the energies and acknowledge the energies of that interaction. Okay, so here's the prompt. What brings you joy? Okay, what brings you joy? You can't get this wrong. I know we're really hard on ourselves, so we're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. You can't get this wrong. Again, if you're tuning in from home by yourself, please use this as a reflective practice to journal, because I've done this also remotely, and people say they rarely stop to think about what brings them joy. Let me give you like 20 seconds to find a partner and to face one another, and I'll tell you when to start. By the way, the person with shorter hair starts, so you don't have to have an argument about that. Okay? And if it's a debate, you can do rock, paper, scissors. So 20 seconds to make sure you're with a partner. People in tech, I hope you try this. It could be cool. Okay, so does anybody need a partner? Having been always part of the B team growing up, and the last one chosen to be on somebody's team, I always look out for someone who needs a partner. Okay, all right, so do we know who the speaker is? Remember, when you speak, you don't have to fill all your time. It's okay to be silent. The listener, the most you can do is nod and smile. And then you're giving the gift of your presence and noticing any other energies in your body and tendencies, and just noticing them. And if you're judging yourself for having them, noticing those judgments too, and returning your anchor to that person. That is your gift, right? You're giving the gift of your attention. Okay, so speaker one, what brings you joy? and stop. And let's just take 30 seconds. It's okay that you didn't complete your sentence because we're doing an exercise. And let's just take 30 seconds to acknowledge the energy of that interaction and just sense what's in your body. Any thoughts, any feelings, any sensations arising from the interaction. Let's just take these 30 seconds to be present. Offering a sense of appreciation to the listener and the speaker in these last 10 seconds. And we're going to switch in just a second, but I want to offer a prompt for people who are tuning in from home by themselves. If you're doing this by yourself as a journaling activity, your next prompt is, what gets in the way of engaging in what brings you joy? What gets in the way? That's your next reflection practice. That's not for you all. So right now, if you're about to be the speaker, notice any energy of anticipation or anxiousness or nervousness. That's just part of being human, right? And if you're the listener, notice what energies are present. And so speaker 2, what brings you joy? And time. And again, 30 seconds. 30 seconds to tune in to the unspoken qualities of this interaction. Not everything is verbal, or not everything comes in words. So tune into the energy of your body. Tune into a sense of appreciation to the listener, to the speaker, to yourself. Feeling your body breathing. In breath, out breath. Okay, and now I invite you, I want to give you 45 seconds because people always want to talk to their partner about what it was like. So I invite you to take 45 seconds to just debrief this experience in whatever way you want. Okay, I'm not giving you any instructions. I'll give you a full minute. Okay, thank you. Take a second to thank your partner. Just say thank you. And I want you to consider, we don't normally interact with others in this way, right? And so people sometimes say, well, that's not how conversation works, right? Why is this exercise powerful? Well, for many reasons, right? Whatever tendencies you noted while you were either the speaker or listener in your body, in your mind, right? How you were feeling, it's very likely that those tendencies show up in everyday conversations at work, at home, when you're interrupted, right? By the way, interruption is a perception, right? To that person, they're not interrupting you anyway. So whatever, back to perception, whatever you saw come up for you here, it's very likely that it's showing up for you in your everyday interactions. And here, this was an exercise to help you be aware of those tendencies, right? So that maybe there's a possibility of bringing a different way of listening and speaking to the people you work with, to the people you live with, to your friends, and even to yourself, right? Because part of the exercise was tuning into your own thoughts, feelings, and sensations with as little judgment. I'm not going to say without judgment, because I know that's really hard, with as little judgment and with a little bit of compassion, right? Anybody want to share what that experience was like? I'm super comfortable with silence. Yeah. Well, let's do this. Look around the room. What do you notice on people's faces after spending 4 minutes talking about what brings them joy? What affective state did you notice? That one I will demand a volunteer if I may. Lots of smiles, okay? So look at that. You were talking about what brings you joy. You weren't actually doing it, right? And yet that shifted you into a positive affective state. That is the power of connection. I mean, it's mind-blowing because I've done this with different leadership groups, and I'm always just blown away at the power of human connection, which you spoke to at the very beginning. I could see it because I was watching you all while you were doing the exercise, and definitely you were lighting up, right? So if we take those moments in our day for experiences like this of connection, do you think it changes the way you show up for your next moment? Yeah, it kind of does. That's just how it is, right? And this takes us back to this, that manic energy state, level 2, that we tend to think is productive, and where we're really churning. Maybe not really the optimal state for us, right? So thank you for trying that exercise. I'll take one more. I'll give another invitation. Does anybody want to say anything about? Oh, I almost fell off the stage. Don't make me fall off the stage. A volunteer, yay. Can we have a mic, please? Oh, we might have more than one volunteer. Up here, up here. Thank you, Chris.
But listening like this demands perhaps some training, because I felt a little shy in the beginning because I've never spoken with Gerda about things that what brings us joy. But training makes the master.
Yeah. So you're speaking to practice, right? Thank you for sharing that. Another share. Come on, look at my smile, inviting a share. This is how we learn from other people. Yeah, we have one back there. Thank you.
I think this exercise taught us actually to listen, because like you were just talking that when we're having a conversation, we always want to, he says something and I just want to cut him off and say what I'm thinking because of what he's talking about. So just being patient and taking the time to listen, it's an exercise all of itself. So, because we were just talking, I'm like, this feels like marriage counseling. So, so is we have things that we want to say and share with our partner or our group, and we have to take the time to listen before we start talking. So that was just our take.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you're not the first person to say that, by the way, that this is a practice they want to carry into their relationship, right? That it might help. Did you have a comment too? No? Okay. All right. And no comments from home, right? From this week. All right. You're looking. Okay. Well, but they were journaling, so I won't ask them for comments. All right. We talked about self-compassion. We did a practice, right? May I have the courage to be imperfect? May I accept myself just as I am? May I trust that I am enough right now? May I remember there are people who care about me? We just took a breathing moment and worked with those phrases, noticing how those phrases felt. We did a connection practice. And now I want to open this inquiry into what rest looks like for you. In our culture where, as I said, productivity bias reigns supreme, rest is maybe one of the toughest ones, right? We often need other people to remind us. But right now, I actually want to invite you to kind of make a tiny commitment to how you're going to offer yourself some rest today. Like, what is one practice today that you will engage in to offer yourself rest? What is rest? What is rest? We said it's not just sleep, although I really hope everybody gets a good night of sleep, and some people will be flying, and I know it'll be tricky, right? And our brains just went to planning and all kinds of things, and all the things we haven't done because we've been at this conference, all the things we have to do. More planning. Okay, so right now, remember our topic is coming back, rest. What is one thing you can do today to engage, to allow your brain to rest, right? And if you have something to write with, writing sometimes helps us commit. So I'm just going to give you like 20 seconds to write down one practice. Doesn't have to be too ambitious. And if you need something to give yourself permission to do that, there's a ton of research that shows that you're going to be able to be more productive if that's where you want to go after you rest. There's also a lot of research that shows that you're going to be more likely to be authentic and feel a little bit more like yourself. and show up as your best self if you take time to rest, right? So I want to offer a little bit of wisdom from Charles Bogle. He now works with Google in the Google School for Leaders, and he's done a lot of research on communities. And we talk about communities a lot in library spaces, in universities, right? And he says that what distinguishes communities from groups, right? Like groups of people who belong to a gym, groups of people who, watch a particular show, groups of people who live in a building. What distinguishes communities from just groups is that they share a mutual concern for one another's well-being. They share a mutual concern for one another's well-being, right? So something to think about as you return to the place that you want to create a community in, right? And you bring these values of rest, self-compassion, and connection, the six or eight dimensions of well-being, depending on how you define them, and these practices. And he's described this as a critical time for leaders because we need to create a culture of belonging in what he calls the most lonely era in organizational history. The most lonely era in organizational history. Okay, so I want to start and end before we go to questions with another prompt. I know I made you all work a lot, but I said there's a lot of wisdom in the room. So when you think about transformative leadership, I would like to be the kind of leader who, having heard and experienced what you did, where is your answer now? And take a couple minutes just to share with your partner. And again, bring a spirit of curiosity rather than criticism. It's really easy to say, but this gets in the way, but this gets in the way. There's a question, instead of what gets in the way, I want you to think, where do I start? How do I start? When you think about starting, I beg you, make those beginnings easy, easeful, right? Start small. All the research on transformational, on transforming habits is about micro habits, right? So think again, what kind of leader do you want to be? Your answer may be the exact same one. And then reflect, where do I start? Where do I start? Okay, so I'll give you a couple minutes for that. Thank you. And those from home, this is a good time to journal again. Thank you. Well, thank you. I want to be respectful of the conference time frame, and I know that we are at a stopping point. I hope that you give yourselves permission to carry these conversations into lunch. If you were thinking of working through lunch, maybe you'll rethink that. I know I will, because I want to see if I connect with people. And I can tell you the list of things I have to do is pretty long, as I'm sure it is for all of you. But it's been such a gift to share this space with you. Thank you for trying new things. You can judge and assess later what you want to keep. But thank you, Anne, for inviting me. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much, Rosario. And we do hope you can stay for lunch with us. We'll be just across the courtyard out here. Thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. And I think everyone, as you say, take what you want to try and what will work for you. So thank you.